Hey everyone, I want to show you really quickly how to do the FHA Financing Addendum because it is the most commonly used financing addendum. Just remember this. If your contract, your offer to purchase that you're representing a buyer on is not a cash deal, it must have a financing addendum. So again, attached to every single offer that you're going to submit, you must have a financing addendum unless, of course, it's a cash offer. So now you need to figure out whether your purchaser is obtaining an FHA, a VA, or a conventional loan. You can always ask the loan officer, or you can look at the loan officer's lender letter. Okay, so what I want you to do, once you're ready to put this together, you can go to our moveforfreerealtor.info website. You can click on the resources button. Now, if you are a member of NVAR, then you will have access to your own Instinet account, and it would be Instinet forms. If you are not a member of NVAR, then you need to call me, and I'm going to give you the username and password. Once you're on the site, you're going to scroll down to Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. And you're going to, again, log in with your username and password. Or you're going to call me and you're going to get the username and password that I have. My suggestion when you're putting in an offer is to start a new transaction. But in this case, we're not going to start a new transaction because I'm just today going to show you the FHA financing form. So again, this would apply if your client is obtaining an FHA loan. So you'll see FHA Financing Addendum. I'm going to create a new form. Let's take a look at this. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here, since I am still new to my iMac, is we're going to put today's date. I'm going to tab over, and this would be, again, the addendum is made on 3/20 to a contract dated 3/20 because you're always going to be doing them on the same day. Now, who's the purchaser's name? Buyer A. Who is the seller? Seller B. What's the property address? 123 Main Street, anywhere in VA with a zip of 20109. Okay? Now, the next section you're going to see is, let's see if I can figure this out, okay, is how much are we going to be financing. Remember, if your sales price is $300,000 and you're doing an FHA loan, you're going to have to put 3.5% down. So if you're putting 3.5% down, you're going to need to do the math, or you can look at, again, the lender letter. But 3.5% of $300,000 is $10,500. So I know that if we're purchasing a $300,000 loan, we're going to have to subtract $10,500, and our financed amount will be $289,500. Okay, so don't put the sales price there. Make sure to put the financed amount. Typically, this is over a 30-year time period at a fixed rate, and I always put TBD because I'm not really sure unless, of course, I know what the financed amount is. Now, again, make sure you do the calculations right, and it says it's going to be contingent. Now, listen, if I know we're closing in 30 days, I'm going to make my contingencies, 28 days. Since today is the 20th of March, and let's just say we're closing at the end of April, I am going to make my financing contingency until 4/26. I try to make it as close as possible to the closing date without getting like on the same day. Why? Because I know just normal loan officers, I mean the typical loan officer doesn't really finish it up until, of course, it's close to settlement. So I'm also going to put that once we reach that date, we're going to go ahead and deliver a lender letter that says it's fully approved. Let's go further down here. And this talks about what the Form 100 and lender letter is going to say. It's basically telling you that the buyer is approved, a ratified contract has been received, Of course, the buyer's made written application and everything has been verified. Again, I would never release my financing contingency unless, again, the lender tells me it's fully approved, it's completely out of underwriting, and the docs are being delivered to the title company. At that point, I'm comfortable. If not, our job is to protect our buyer and do not release the lender letter. I'm sorry, do not release the Form 100. Okay? So again, if it says, this is my favorite part, if the buyer fails to remove the financing contingency by the financial deadline, the contingency will continue. So let's just say the 26th comes around and the lender tells me that it's not done yet. Well, I don't have to do anything. Now, a majority of the time, you're not going to have a listing agent that's knocking on your door, emailing you, and harassing you for Form 100. But occasionally, you will have those. I typically tell them, look, the lender's still working on us. Give it a few more days. Or, you know what, let me contact the seller, and let me contact the lender, and let's see what the lender says. You know, so I literally just stall at that point. The only thing that could happen is the seller could actually serve a notice that the contract will become void at 9 p.m. on the third day unless you remove the financing contingency. Okay, again, I've never seen anyone deliver that notice, but if they do, at that point you have 3 days to get your act together, or technically the contract's dead. Look, even if the contract is dead, does the seller want to go through another buyer? I mean, they've got to search for a new buyer, then wait for the whole new loan process to go through with the new buyer. I mean, if you were to settle a couple days later, they're more likely going to take your, go to settlement with you because they don't want to wait all the extra time, unless, of course, the new offer is a lot higher. All right, so if we go down to paragraph 3, it talks about the appraisal provision. And, of course, we want to make sure that the appraisal comes in no less than sales price. Sometimes people will make you put the actual sales price of $300,000. I'm going to tell you why I put sales price, because sometimes in negotiations we go back and forth on the price, and every time I would have to change this. And imagine if we ended up settling for a higher price, but I forgot to change this section. And let's just say, let's say I submit my offer for $300,000, seller counters back at $315,000 and my buyer accepts it, but I kept this at $300,000. And let's just say that the appraisal comes in at $300,000. The buyer would be forced to continue forward. So I just like to say sales price to cover myself, and that way there's less things for me to worry about. So again, now what happens in the event of a low appraisal? In the event of a low appraisal, what you're going to do is going to be delivering a notice to the seller, and you're going to let them know that the sales price needs to be adjusted. I personally don't even deliver notice. I just go ahead and send an addendum reducing the price along with a copy of the appraisal. Just send over an addendum saying all parties agree sales price will be changed from $300,000 to $295,000, and that's it. And then have your buyer sign, send over a copy of the appraisal report so that they see that the appraisal report came in low. And again, 9 out of 10 times you're going to get them to sign, the seller's going to sign it because they know they can't sell it. But then you'll always have that time at some point in your life where the seller wants to fight with you about it and they want to order another appraisal and this, that, and the other. Again, before you submit the offer, do your comps to make sure that you're not going to have that happen. If the appraisal looks like it's going to be tight, prepare your buyers in advance. Okay, so at that point, it goes back and forth between the buyer and the seller, or whether they're going to go ahead and reduce the value or not, just in case. But if the appraisal comes in fine, no need to worry about it. If neither party responds in 3 days of either notice, then at that point it becomes void. This is paragraph 4, and this is one of the most important paragraphs in your financing contingency. This is how much we're asking for closing cost. So based upon the financing terms specified in this contract, the seller will pay blank dollars towards the buyer's closing cost. So you're going to have most people tell you that the financing charges are about 3%. So in this case, it would be $9,000. I do not recommend doing that. I recommend calling your loan officer and getting as close a figure as possible and explain to your buyer that there's consequences of asking for too much and there's consequences of asking for too little. So we want a good loan officer that'll give us as close as possible to that number. Here's why. Let's just say I put $9,000 and the closing cost totals come in at $10,000. My buyer is going to have to come out of pocket. And if you don't prepare them for this, guess who's going to be paying for it? Trust me, every time you're going to be having to come out of your pocket. So you want to make sure that you're using a good lender. Now, let's just say the lender's a little bit scared and it's like, well, let's just put $12,000 just in case. And then let's just imagine you put $12,000 here, you submit your offer. Now, let's imagine that the total cost would only really come up to $9,000. If a competing offer comes in that says $9,000 or even $10,000, the seller is going to think that they're netting more with this other offer, even though in reality, if yours came in at $9,000 and the other people put $10,000, you may have netted the seller more, but because you asked for too much, it appeared as if the seller would net too little. So be careful with this number. That you should never submit offers until you have this number from the loan officer. And I can't tell you how many times I've had buyers say to me, well, I want to use this particular lender. And then when we go to write an offer at 9 o'clock at night, the lender is nowhere in sight. And I'm like, look, why don't you just go to my lender and they'll give us a total right now. So that's what I do. But anyway, be careful with that number. So paragraph 4 is where you're going to put your closing cost. Okay. Termite inspection. Fences and outbuildings shall be included in the inspection. And you remember in the regional sales contract, you're going to elect whether the purchaser or seller is going to pay for that termite inspection. My recommendation is always that the purchaser pay because I would like to avoid any kind of conflict of interest. And if the seller's selecting the termite company, you never know if it's Uncle Bob, you know, so we want to always protect the purchaser since this would be our client at that point. Sometimes FHA is a little bit picky and they're going to ask for repairs to be made occasionally. And if that's the case, then what you want to do is make sure that you're letting the seller know what repairs are required. And those repairs should be in the appraisal. So at that point, you're going to have to ask the seller, will they make the repairs, yes or no? Again, you're going back. I don't use notices. I use an addendum for this because I need the seller's permission. So again, I never use addendums for this because I need the seller's permission. Seller will make the following repairs. And then it's just yes or no. I mean, they either sign it or they don't. All right, so certification. A buyer and seller hereby certify that the terms of the contract are true and to the best of their knowledge. So that's, you know, always required. FHA required notice will be attached, which is for your protection, get a home inspection. I never attach this unless my clients are not getting a home inspection. If they are not, then I 100% will have this in here. And that's for your protection, guys. You want to make sure that they don't have the opportunity to come back later and say, well, my agent never told me to get a home inspection. That's going to be a problem. So make sure that you, if they're not getting a home inspection, that you have them sign this form. You're going to find it in Instanet as well. Make sure your buyer initials this. Make sure your buyer signs this. And at that point, you go ahead and make sure that you get it in here. It says agent or broker, so you can go ahead and sign this yourself. And guys, you're done. At that point, you want to make sure that you go in, file, save. You could print it. You could send it. I usually will add it to a transaction. But in this case, I'm not going to do that because I'm just showing you this one particular form. So good luck, guys. I know that you guys are capable of amazing things, and it's up to you whether you make this happen or not. Remember, I'm always here for you, okay? So if anything you need, just let me know.